هلو، الأخبار عاملين ايه؟ النهاردة معانا عملنا انترفيو مع زاك دراشن. زاك هو اكتيفيست من روسيا، جاء جورجيا من فترة حوالي سنة، واتشرفت ان انا اعمل معاه. اللي انتوا بتسمعوه ده دلوقتي هيكونوا بالانجليزي، باللغة الانجليزية. الانترفيو اتعملت باللغة الانجليزية لان اكيد طبعا يعني انا ما بتكلمش روسي، هو ما بيتكلمش عربي، فبس الانترفيو لحسن الحظ يعني انا ترجمتها بالعربي. اللي انتوا بتشوفوه دلوقتي، بعد لو انتوا بتشوفوا لايف اعملوا لايك وشير وسبسكرايب وبصوا صندوق الوصف. لو انتوا بتسمعوا على البودكاست، لو حابين تسمعوا على البودكاست بتفهموا انجليزي او بتعرفوا انجليزي، ممكن برضو تشوفوا الفيديو او في صندوق الوصف. بودكاست صندوق الوصف، لينك في صندوق الوصف. متنسوش لايك شير سبسكرايب. كمان ممكن تلاحظوا اللي في الفيديو وقت التصوير انا لاحظتها لاحقا وانا كنت بعمل editing للفيديو، اللي انا كنت برا الكادر. يعني انا كنت لوحدي، انا اللي بصور، وانا عدلت الكادر بتاع الكاميرا وقعدت بعد كده جنب زاك وبنعمل الانترفيو. ما كنتش عارفه ان انا اوريدي برا الكادر غير لما خلصت الانترفيو ومشي وروحت وبعد الفيديو. فبس لو شفتوني برا الكادر ما تستغربوش، انا ما كنتش عارفه ان انا اوريدي برا الكادر. يعني ما كانش في حد يظبط مثلا معايا ويقول لي مثلا ممكن تقعدي كده شويه او كده. يعني كنت انا لوحدي وبصور، فيعني كتر خيري. ما تنسوش تاني لايك وشير وسبسكرايب.
Hey Dolly, thank you so much for inviting me for your channel to discuss, religion. And I'm from Russia. I'm a 21 years old Russian. My name is Zach, and I left Russia because of the war against Ukraine. And since Russia invaded Ukraine 24th of February, Russian Orthodox Church supported this war, and it is unacceptable for me. So
seeing your videos about the Z symbol and about very interesting things, like I've seen the video of course, but for the new people who are from Egypt who don't know what is Z symbol refer to and how it's affecting the mainstream in Russia.
Basically this symbol is just almost like a new swastika, to be honest. Right now Russian government use it as a symbol of support against of aggression against Ukraine. And the history behind this Z symbol is basically when 21st of February, when just the war started and Russia invaded Ukraine from 4 directions. So this is a huge war, the biggest war in Europe since the Second World War. And Z was standing for to mark one of the directions of the Russian army, which was going to invade Ukraine from Donetsk and Luhansk directions, which are the main direction basically. So Z was like the most common sign on the tanks, on the vehicles, on different armored vehicles, just to show this is Russian tanks, let's say. So, but then Russian government were thinking, were like, oh, this symbol is starting to get popular among our population, those who support the war. So we should, develop this symbol so it will become the symbol of Russian, like power or something. So since then, Russia became like a Z itself. It's all over in every single city. Even in my hometown, they got those Z symbols. And what's more interesting, they made this Z combined with we got this symbol of Russian victory from the Second World War, and before that, it's basically it's called Georgian ribbon, Georgi ribbon, and it's like saying Georgi ribbon, so it's like related to church actually. So this is also relates to the church and at the same time to the invasion, and so they combine it to the Z letter, and it's all becoming like a huge support of the war combined with the church. So yeah, it's the history of it basically. Yeah.
Thank you so much for explaining that. Let us know more about the church. Like I understand now more, and I think people understand now about the Z and what its mission in Russia and how it came from. But I've seen lots of articles about how Russian mainstream and in the television like trying to mobilize young people and using religion about that. So what are your thoughts about it?
Yeah, so basically Russia is Catholic, but it's not just Catholic, it's not Catholic, but it's Christian. but it's not Catholic, it's Orthodox. So it's pretty interesting because mostly Eastern Europe is Orthodox Church, and most of the churches, for example, even in Baltic states like Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, in Ukraine, they used to be connected to the Russian Church. So they used to say like, yeah, Russian Orthodox Church is the head of Orthodox Church in the whole like Eurasia. But right now it's changing, and Russian Church since the beginning of the war started to support this invasion so badly. For example, the main bishop of Russian Orthodox Church, Patriarch Kirill, he said that Russia needs to mobilize itself. When mobilization in Russia started after 21st of September, he said that Russia needs to mobilize itself and its spirit to fight the powers of evil so they won't conquer Russia. And so he, as the main head of Russian Orthodox Church, like the, let's say, the person whom people trust, who believe in God in Russia, they see, okay, he supports the war and he is almost saint, so okay, this war is a holy war, so this is why we need to support that. So Russian Orthodox Church does a lot to support this war, to show people like, yeah, if we support this, you should support this.
И вот это желание победить Россию сегодня приобрело, как мы знаем, очень опасные формы. Мы молимся Господу, чтобы Он вразумил тех безумцев и помог им понять, что всякое желание уничтожить Россию будет означать конец мира. Сегодня мы знаем, что возникают очень большие угрозы миру, нашей стране, да и всему роду человеческому, потому что у каких-то безумных людей появилась мысль о том, что великую державу российскую, обладающую мощным оружием, населенную очень сильными людьми, которые из поколения в поколение всегда были мотивированы на победу, которые не сдались никогда ни одному врагу, которые всегда выходили победителями, что их можно в нынешних условиях либо победить, либо, как теперь говорят, переформатировать, то есть навязать им некие ценности, которые даже и ценностями назвать невозможно, для того, чтобы они были как все и подчинялись тем, у кого есть сила контролировать большую часть мира.
And what's interesting that some of the, not patriarch, but some of the people in monasteries in Russia, they were against it. And there was a case in March 2022 when one of the priests in a church, he was fined for about $500 for giving a service which were related to the peace. So for peaceful service, he was fined. Well, thanks God, not put in jail for peaceful service. But yeah, so Russian Orthodox Church even prohibits to pray for peace. So this is what it came to the end. So yeah, it's really bad that, you know, so many people in Russia are religious, and when they see that authority of Patriarch Kirill says, yeah, this war is right, is just, so they support it too.
But it's very interesting, even church just doing pray for peace. They find the church charge the priest $500.
Yeah, a priest was fined for $500 for making this service which were related to peace. So they were praying, let peace take place between Ukraine and Russia. And they used to call Ukraine and Russia as like brother nations, and still they call it like that. So they were like, he was like, yeah, let be peace among brothers, like that. And for that he was fined $35, and he was just expelled from the Russian church for that.
So he's no longer a priest anymore, like,
yeah,
he lost his position forever.
Yeah, he lost his position forever just for praying for peace. Well, not forever, you know. I hope one day Putin is going to be over and there's going to be a reformation in the Russian Orthodox Church, and maybe he will be allowed to come back and to be just a priest.
What about, like, is there anyone just from Russian government or even people said no for the religion or anything, and said like, no, I don't believe in your God and your religion because your religion is saying go to war, and I don't believe in that? Like, is anyone said that in the government or show their disagreement?
Not in the government, unfortunately, because Russian government, like Putin, he's ruling Russia for more than 20 years. Like, I was born in 2001, and Putin came to power in the year of 1999. So 2 years before my birth, my birth, and he made this whole structure of Russian government the way that there is nobody who's gonna oppose him, nobody who's gonna criticize him. So it's like totally controlled by Putin, and of course there are no people who would just say officially, yes, I'm against the war. Those people are really afraid they're just gonna be killed by Putin. So not many people in the government, not many, no one said I'm against the war. Some of them were just trying to show some signs, but not really. And what about just ordinary people? I would say that especially young people in Russia, we don't really like, even those who believe in God, they don't like Russian Orthodox Church, because Russian Orthodox Church became a part of almost like a branch of the government. It really it helps Putin to justify his rule. And Patriarch Kirill, he like the head of Russian Orthodox Church, he always says like Putin is like sent from heaven to us to protect Russia from the enemies. And Russian Orthodox Church is super conservative and super restricted. For example, there was a case, one of the activists in Russia, he was just a YouTuber, just a guy, his name is Sokolovsky, and he was put in jail for about 5 years or 4 years, I don't really remember, just because he came to Russian Orthodox Church to, there was a game, Pokemon Go.
Поэтому я решил просто взять и половить церкви покемонов, потому что почему бы и нет. Я считаю, что это и безопасно, и законно не запрещено.
A Russian court has given a 3.5-year suspended sentence to a blogger for playing Pokemon Go inside a Russian Orthodox church. Ruslan Sokolovsky was found guilty of inciting religious hatred after posting a video of himself playing the game on his mobile phone in the church last year. He had pleaded not guilty. In the video, the 22-year-old likens Jesus Christ to a Pokemon character and said he decided to play the game inside a church after watching a news report warning people doing so would be fined or jailed. After the verdict was read out, Sokolovsky said, "Without the support from reporters, I would possibly have been given a real prison sentence."
And he was trying to look for Pokemons in the church. In the church. And they were filming video about it. And he was put in jail for 5 or 4 years just for filming this video, like looking for Pokemons in the church. And it's just one of the examples of that, how restrictive they are. And they always justify the rule of current regime by religion or something. So this is why most of young people don't like it. Even my mom, for example, she's really religious, but she doesn't like Russian Orthodox Church because it's too much. It's almost like a government. So yeah.
Oh my god, there are a lot of things. I have many questions. About the religion in Russia, how people react towards that. Can anyone just you mentioned before the government, no one in the government can disagree with anyone, especially the president, but what are the consequences if the people do that? Not the priest, like you mentioned the previous example, but the people.
Well, it's brutal. It's really brutal because since the war started, Russia got so many new laws which prohibits basically saying anything about the war, even calling this war a war. They say that you need to call it special military operation. So if you say special military operation, what's special about it? It's just a war. And if you call it a war, you can get to jail. There are cases of people who got to jail because they called this war, and they were even on the internet, on social medias, they said this war is unjust, and they got to jail for 5 years just for saying war. So war is a prohibited word, and also the word mir, which translates as a peace, is also prohibited. And it's you can get to jail for that. And there is this law about, it says discreditation of Russian army. So if you discreditate Russian army in any possible way, you can get to jail up to 8 years. And what does discreditation of Russian army means? Anything. You can just say like Russian army is not good. Discreditation. Go to jail. You can just say, I don't know, like Russian army did this. Discreditation. Go to jail. So it's brutal, and people go to jail just for saying like, yeah, I'm against the war and everything. It's really brutal. And religion in Russia, by the way, Russia is like most of the people, yes, they are Orthodox Church. They relate to Orthodox Church, but Russia by constitution is a secular state. So now no religion is connected to the state. However, Russia is really diverse. Like Russia consists of many minorities, many different nationalities and everything. So we got this like Muslim people in the Caucasus, for example. We got Buddhist people in like Chuvastia region, for example. And Russia is really diverse by that. But what's interesting that anyway, even though it says in constitution that Russia is secular, they still trying to show that Orthodox Church is the main religion, and if you are not related to the Orthodox Church, you are like not with us or something. So they're trying to make people more to get rid of their religions and to turn more to Russian Orthodox Christianity, basically. So it's not really good. And I remember there was a case, for example, when I was 16 years old, I was still in high school, and in high school, boys, not girls, only boys, they have to go for military training. So we go to the military base for 2 weeks. We train, we like dissolve AKs, like do some physical exercises. And what was interesting that in that military base, they got Russian Orthodox monastery. And I was really like shocked, because at that time I was studying law in high school, and I remember that in the constitution it says Russia is a secular state. Why do they have in a governmental institution like army, why do they have a monastery? And okay, maybe it's okay to have monastery or something related to religion in army, but if you say okay, it's okay to have religion in army, why do you only have Russian Orthodox monastery? Why don't you have, for example, a mosque? Why don't you have a Buddhist monastery and everything? So I remember there was a conference after that 2 weeks of training, and I said this to the military guy, to the like officer, like Russia is a secular state by constitution. Why do you only have Russian Orthodox monastery here? And they were just laughing at me for me asking this question, because everybody understands constitution in Russia doesn't work. Nobody cares what's written in the constitution. So this is why everybody were laughing at my question. Yeah, so it's interesting.
Thank you for explaining that part. But it's very interesting when you mentioned that even Muslims and other religions feel like they've been outcast from the society, because I think they are the minority there.
You're right. I wouldn't say it depends on the region. For example, in Caucasus region, north of Georgia, like in Chechnya, Ingushetia, Dagestan regions, people are Muslim for the most part. So in the north of Russia, of Caucasus region, people are Muslim for the most part. In Chechnya, in Dagestan, in Ingushetia, in Syria, people are mostly Muslim. And many of them are coming to Moscow, to the capital of Russia, and they are being discriminated just because they are Muslims. Because Russia is quite, xenophobic to other religions. Like if your religious is Muslim, or if you're just from Caucasus and you want, for example, to rent an apartment in Moscow, you will struggle. And I experienced it myself, even though I'm not like from Caucasus. I don't believe in Islam, but I was trying to rent apartment with my friend, and he's Azerbaijani, and he looks not Slavic, and it was a big problem, because once I said we were calling the owner of apartment, and was like, okay, so we are 2 young men, and one of us is Muslim, and they were like, no, just because he's Muslim. So this is a big problem for people who are from Caucasus, especially because people in Russia just don't like anybody who doesn't look Slavic. Even like for example, Yakutia, this is a region in the far east of Russia, in the north. It's really cold over there, and people looks Asian. And even they have problems renting apartments. So even though Russia is like a big empire, and big empires always have different nationalities, and big empires should be always like accepted. They should accept other religions, other cultures, other minorities. Yeah, and they don't in Russia, so it's really bad.
I've seen before lots of videos about people who are actually Muslims, left their countries and went to Russia, and they're encouraging people to come to Russia. They respect Islam. But from what you said, it seems like it's not true.
Yeah, I guess they only respect Islam in Caucasus, because, that's where most of the Muslim people live. But anywhere else, no, not really. So if you, maybe in Chechnya, usually like Ramzan Kadyrov, I guess you heard about this name. Yeah. He always trying to show like, yes, I'm the most like religious guy. We protect Russia here. And he even called this, I don't remember the name, the term in Islam, when you call a holy war, how do you call it? Like jihad?
Yeah,
jihad. So he called jihad on Ukraine.
He called jihad on Ukraine. He called it, oh my God.
Yeah, and he raised so many soldiers in Chechnya to send to Ukraine. But what's more interesting that his father, Ahmad Kadyrov, he was fighting against Russia, and he was a priest of Chechnya in 1996, 1999, when Russia got this war between Chechnya and Russia, like civil war, basically. Not civil, but like inner war. And his father was opposing Russia, and his father called jihad on Russia. But then, once Chechnya lost, his father switched. And then his father died, and Ramzan Kadyrov became a leader of Chechnya. And he's still a leader for how many, like 15 years, I guess? So maybe, and they tried to show like, yeah, we are so Muslim, we're so religious. But I don't really think that he even believes in Islam or religion, because what he does, like killing people, killing activists who criticize him, is it religious? Is it religious when you just kill a person for saying something against you and not even saying like you? Yeah, it's a dictatorship. It's not saint by any religion, anyhow. So I don't really believe that he even believes in Islam and Muhammad or something. So yeah, it's really diverse in Russia. What's interesting that if you travel to Russia or to Chechnya, which is part of Russia, and you're gonna be having problems if you're a man and if you're wearing shorts, because they're gonna say like it's against Islam.
Like the other version of Iran.
Yeah, I guess, right. And the girls, even if they go in the streets without like inner skirts, they're gonna be like, just any person gonna come over and they say, don't do that, we don't like it. So it's quite super conservative. Or maybe they respect Islam, I don't know. Yeah, not the Muslims.
I've heard that even Chechnya, like Putin wanted them to be in his side, and they went there to fight in Ukraine, but they split. There are two different armies, one who's fighting for Russia and the other part against Russia. It's true?
It's true, but it's not like those both armies come from Chechnya at the moment, because though like basically it comes from history. In 1999 and 1997 there was two Chechen wars, and Russia and Chechnya wanted independence, because the Soviet Union collapsed. Many ex-republics of the USSR got its independence. Georgia, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, and Chechnya wanted to get itself a new country, and they wanted to call it Ichkeria or something, and they were fighting for this, and Russia basically won, because Chechnya is small and Russia is huge, so it's impossible to fight against Russia at that circumstances. And so after they lost, those people who were pro Ichkeria, for the independence, they had to flee Russia and Chechnya for just safety, because Russia would put them in jail for like forever. Those people who fled, many of them right now are fighting for Ukraine. They got their own battalion. I believe it's called like it was a leader of Ichkeria movement, of independence movement. I forgot his name, and so their battalion is called in favor of his name. So yeah, there are some Chechens. It's not like a huge battalion. It's not like a huge army. It's really hard to call it an army, but it's like a battalion. But there is also a battalion of, for example, Russians who fled Russia to fight for Ukraine. So I guess they work together. So yeah.
Never thought that this is so brutal. But from a person I'm an ex-Muslim and I came from Egypt, and I've seen some or many Egyptian politicians are with the propaganda that Putin is trying to say in the mainstream media. I know that you don't know the history of Middle East, but what are your thoughts about that as a Russian activist? Why Putin is doing that? He really is so hypocrite, because inside Russia he's supporting the church, but outside Russia he's supporting Islam, and he's saying anyone criticizing Islam, Islamophobe. That really triggered me. What do you know about Islam?
Yeah, right. I guess he just wants to get some power and some support outside of Russia, because, you know, the whole world right now is against Russia. Not against, but at least they disapprove the invasion to Ukraine. And he wants to find at least some allies and he would be able to show the Russians, look, we got Egypt as an ally, so it shows something, right? We got some support. And how many countries did support Russian invasion? Like 4 or 5. I know, like Iran, even not Venezuela. Venezuela is like a huge dictatorship. They always used to support Russia. Even Venezuela didn't support that. They didn't vote on a UN conference like over peace. Some of like African states, which Russia just give money just as a support. Just to get this voice in the UN, in United Nations, but not many countries. So I guess they're still trying to get this support from other states. So maybe they will have some votes in United Nations when there's going to be a vote for, let's say, do we justify Russian invasion or do we justify those territories that Russia occupied? For example, because since the war, Russia occupied, I guess, maybe about 10%, maybe less of Ukrainian territory, like Donetsk, Luhansk territories, Zaporozhye, Kherson region, which was liberated recently, and Mariupol, different cities. So they need to justify those territories on international arena somehow, so that this is part of Russia. Because at the moment, I believe maybe only 2 countries support those territories, think that those territories are Russian territories since now. So they need more support of that. So that's why they trying to say like, if you Islamophobic, it means that you're against all the Muslim countries. So they try to get this, to build a new alliance, I guess.
I think that's just politics, and he's being dirty in here. Could you please share with us more about your activism in Russia and how that impacted you in a personal state, and if you like to share or comfortable with?
Yeah, before the war, I was participating in the protest. I wasn't a huge activist because I was still about 18, 19 years old, and also I was enrolled into the university in Moscow, and there is a problem with protesting in Russia. If you are being spotted on the protest, for example, if you've been arrested, they're gonna tell this to a university you study, and then the university can expel you just for violating inner rules. So protesting in Russia is not only dangerous for your safety, it's also dangerous for you not to get your education done. And in Russia, it's really important to get your education done for even any kind of low quality job. So I was participating, I guess, in 4 protests, big protests in Russia before the war. It was mostly related to Navalny's imprisonment. Do you know Navalny, right? Alexei Navalny, I guess the biggest oppositionist in Russia. And he was firstly poisoned on a plane to Omsk, and then after he came back from Germany from the treatment, he eventually from the airport was arrested and put in jail. So those were the protests I was participating in, and the one in 2018 also related to Navalny's foundation. Yeah, it was my first initial activism before the war. And before the war, my YouTube channel was mostly about my life. And I was showing the life in the far east of Russia, in my home region. And then I was telling in English about this, because there is literally almost no one who shows the same content, how life is in different part of Russia, not in Moscow. Because everyone usually, when you go, especially tourists, when they go to Russia, they go to Moscow, and Moscow is beautiful, and that's it. Russia is the same as Moscow. No, it's not. It's really different. We Russians always call that Moscow is not Russia. It's really different. It's really top tier city in the world, but rest of Russia is so underdeveloped, and especially the far east of Russia, it's so far. So I was showing that, and then I went to the US as an exchange student. I was showing just my life, how I was living in the US as a Russian, and then when I came back, I was actually planning to make videos about Moscow in details in English, because there are many videos, general videos about Moscow, but not in details. I just came to Moscow, just rented an apartment with my friend, and then 2 weeks later, the war started. And since the war started, I went to the protest 24th of February. It was not a huge protest, unfortunately, because most of the people were just shocked. They were just trying to reflect on what happened, the war against Ukraine, how it is imaginable. So after the protest, I was so paranoid that police gonna arrest me. It was actually interesting. The next 25th of February, the next day after the protest, I was teaching a lesson at my apartment, and I teach Russian to some of my subscribers, English-speaking subscribers. And I was teaching a lesson. At one moment, somebody knocked at our door of our apartment, and my roommate Bilal, he just came to me Zach, I think this is for you. Like, police came. It's like, are you for real? He was like, I don't know, maybe. And I was like, okay, what do I do? What do I do? And it was like in the middle of a class, and my student, he was like, what is going on? And we were living on the second floor, like, of the apartment building, and I was thinking, okay, should I jump off the window and just run away? And it was January, there was snow. I was like, okay, maybe I will not break anything or something. And I was just so stressed out. What do? I don't want to be arrested and then put in the army to fight against Ukraine. So I 20 years old. Right now I'm 21, so I left Russia when I was 20, and yeah, I was 20 years old, and I was still in university. So I just went right away to the balcony of my apartment, and I just laid down on the balcony. I was like, okay, if they're gonna enter the room, they're gonna be, okay, no one will go away. It's actually stupid. No, they would go to check balcony, but I didn't have any other better ideas. And so it actually appeared to be a friend of mine just visiting us, and he came to my apartment, entered the balcony. He's like, Zach, what are you doing there? Yeah, so this is how. We didn't know, and we got know that, this thing which you look through the window or through the door, so we just didn't know, we were paranoid. So I was really paranoid. So I was like, okay, I cannot live here anymore, because it's just, firstly, it doesn't really correlate with my plan of making videos about Moscow on YouTube. How the hell am I going to film those videos, how Moscow is beautiful and everything, while so many people are dying because of Moscow? I'm not gonna say like, oh, look at this beautiful buildings built in like 1950s. Who the hell cares while there is a war? So this is the reason why I was like, okay, I need to be that voice against the war as a Russian, because there are not so many Russians on YouTube who speak English and who oppose the war, unfortunately. And it's really important to show that there are still some Russians who are against the war, that not all Russians are fascists. So this is what was my initial idea of leaving Russia and building this channel. So yeah,
that's very amazing and very impactful, and you're so brave, and I hope other people lead your steps and go as you did. Can you share with me and with us, if you're comfortable, about your life here in Tbilisi, how you can compare it with Russia? Oh, yeah. How did you feel came here?
Yeah, actually first month when I came, I felt really anxious, because Russia and Georgia, it got some beefs before. The 20% of Georgia is occupied by Russia, and on the streets of Tbilisi you can see a lot of signs like "fuck Russians." And actually it's interesting that I know some Russians who cross Russians and write Putin, but then some Georgians cross Putin and write Russians again. So I felt like all Georgians gonna hate me just for being Russian, but actually later it appeared, no, most of the people understand if you are against the war, if you're against Putin, if you say Putin хуйло, it's totally fine. Like, if you are adequate Russian, so to say, you're fine. And I got no bad experience with Georgians who would say like, oh, go back to Russia or something. Nothing like that. So it's totally fine here. So Georgia is beautiful, and I'm really grateful for the hospitality Georgian people provide. I'm really thankful for that. And the reason why there are so many Russians came to Georgia is just because the visa-free regime. Not visa-free regime, yeah. So yeah, you don't need a visa. And secondly, you can stay here up to 365 days without anything like visa, and then you can just leave to Armenia, for example, a neighbor country, come back, make a visa run, and you can stay 1 more year. So it's really chill, and many people speak Russian here. Many Georgians who were born in the USSR, they were made to learn Russian, so it's quite convenient. And younger generations, they do not speak Russian, but they speak English. So I'm good with English and Russian here, absolutely. Yeah, so my life in Georgia is pretty nice. I'm not complaining as a refugee life. It's not like that, but it's pretty nice, yeah. And yeah, I'm really grateful for Georgia for that, yeah.
That's really amazing. But how did you feel during the protest here?
Oh yeah.
How did you feel with that? Can you share that with us?
Yeah, sure. So once I came to Georgia, I started to participate in the different protests, just rallies to support Ukraine and to show my position against Putin and Russian war against Ukraine. So it was really interesting that in Russia, and before I came to Georgia, I've never participated in the protests which were not related to violence of police. So every protest in Russia ended up with policemen either arresting you, beating you up, and I got different situations when policemen were grabbing my hand, and I was lucky to take it away and not being arrested, or when 6 policemen were chasing me at the same time, 24th of February. And once I came to Georgia, I was thinking, okay, maybe policemen's not gonna be arresting me, but they're not gonna be helping us to protest. But I remember the first protest I went, it was like 20th of March or something like that. We went to protest to the Russian embassy, but it's not like Russian embassy. There is no Russian embassy in Georgia because of the war of 2008. So there is like a small section of Russian interests in the embassy of Switzerland. And we went to protest there, and policemen, once they show up, they didn't like arrested us anyhow. They didn't say anything to us. And what's more interesting that across the Russian embassy, like the section of interest, there is a Ukrainian embassy across the street. And so the policemen, they helped us to block the street of like the car flow, so we the protesters could go to Ukrainian embassy to shout like Slava Ukraini, and then go back and to shout like Putin Hulo. So policemen were literally helping us, and it was such an experience to me, like cultural shock basically, that police is not arresting you, police is helping you. So it was really, I don't know, special for me in Georgia. Yeah, I wish, someday Russia gonna be like democratic, and it's gonna be possible in Russia. So yeah.
That's really amazing. Thank you so much for sharing everything with us, Zach.
Yeah,
I really appreciate it.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity, because right now it's important that to show that there are still some Russians who are against the war. Those that not all Russians are fascists and inhumans and everything. So yeah, thank you so much, and I hope that things will get better in Egypt, and you'll be able to come back at some point. And yeah, just good luck with your channel.
Thank you so much. Would you like to say something to other young people who are still in Russia and still fighting against Putin?
Yeah, to be honest, there are many things to tell them. Firstly, I'd say that every single of us, Russians who oppose the war, we got relatives who support the war. Like, for example, my grandma, she supported the war. My mom is like so all the time. It does. So I think it's important not to get away from your relatives, from your parents, and still try to change their opinion. Trying different methods, trying just talking to them, not saying like, okay, you are fascist, I'm not gonna talk to you, because I know many of my friends, they gave up talking to their parents, trying to change their opinion. But I think this is the only thing we can do as people, to change firstly opinions of others who are close to us. So this is what I think, if you're still in Russia or if you're even outside of Russia, just make sure not to give up. And yeah, I think, to be honest, right now it's really dangerous to protest in Russia. It's almost impossible. It's really dangerous, and the chances if you protest you're gonna be like jailed, or I don't know, like not killed of course, but jail at least, they are high. And if you are still in Russia, I think even the Ukrainian officials, even like Zelensky, he was saying, if you are still in Russia and you are against the war, leave. This is the only thing you can do right now. Russia is a dictatorship at the moment, and it's so solid. It's not like falling apart, unfortunately. So if you just have the ability, just leave. It's like the safest thing you can do for your own life. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much, Zach. I really appreciate it. So
See ya.
Путин пошел войной в Украину, но обосрался и не прошло. Теперь в Европе и во всем мире каждый знает, Путин хуйло. Путин пошел войной в Украину, но обосрался и не прошло. Теперь в Европе и во всем мире каждый знает, Путин хуйло. Путин пошел войной в Украину, но обосрался и не прошло. Теперь в Европе и во всем мире каждый знает, Путин хуйло. Путин пошел войной в Украину, но обосрался и не прошло. Теперь в Европе и во всем мире